Welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. And today I am joined for the first time by Nolan Vannata. Did I get that?
You did say that right. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. And it's like I always have to double check with everybody regardless of their last name because like sometimes there's a pronunciation that's like a little different. But with that said, it's great to be able to connect you with you on the show. We got to meet at the Real Coaches Summit this past, was it April? It was April or
Yeah.
May?
Yeah. Late April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the thing that really kind of inspired me was I knew a lot of people were hesitant to go, but I think I saw your clip on the Real Coaches Summit page, and it was kind of like how you're sort of like taking a big risk to go to the summit. So I, for one, appreciate that you showed up because if you hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten to connect with you in the same way. And before we kind of dive into things, tell me about what your journey was like going to the summit, leading up to the summit, and after the summit.
Yeah. So I started following a lot of other coaches over the past couple of years, one of which is Aram, who hosts the Real Coaches Summit. And he started promoting it. And I heard like a lot of good things from the previous years, just from like a bunch of the coaches I follow. And I've been coaching for like 8 years total, but I'm very new to like you know, do it yourself and like business side of things and like try to, like I said, like do this yourself. So I was like, all right, I gotta learn some stuff. So I was talking to Aram, seeing what this is all about. I eventually decided to go, and that's funny. You mentioned that video that Aram posted of like me saying like, hey, here's why I'm going. Because when I registered, he's like, hey, can you like record a clip saying like why you're deciding to go and like what your hesitations were? And I did it. And then when I saw him in person, he's like, yeah, you're the only one out of like 100 people that I asked that actually made a video. So he was all excited about it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's always good to kind of have that kind of like abundance mindset where it's like you can see someone has a mission, and if you can pour into that mission, like we don't lose anything from it. And for that reason, I've been just doing plugs for the Real Coaches Summit with everybody that I know that I met through it because I'm like, I have nothing to lose. I want a ROM's event to be successful. I want lots of good people to be able to show up, and I want to kind of give them advance notice to start setting aside the funds that they need to make it happen. And I want to have like sort of like testimonials of how people had no regrets. So with that said, and we will kind of like introduce you a bit more to the audience too, but before that, what was kind of like some of the things that happened in your career, in your life since that event? Was there anything that was different? Was it just business as usual?
I think I just came away with a lot of clarity. Not only that I am in this for the right reasons, because like everyone there was just so nice, and like the people that I got to see them, they're kind of like a couple of years ahead of like where I want to be and things like that. And they're so happy with it, and they kind of express those same concerns of like someone starting their own coaching practice. And they're like, oh, I remember that. It's tough. And I also got a lot of clarity just on the coaching side. I do a lot of self study, but to hear it directly from experts in those specific fields themselves, like I like to say, like out of like all the information that I got there, I would say like 10% of it was new information and like 90% was just reinforcement. So I just have like a lot more confidence behind, a lot of the things that I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is right. This is the right messaging. This is the right information. But like just the clarity to hear that from, all those speakers was really cool. And yeah, everyone was so nice. I felt welcome in like 20 minutes. Like it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, like for myself, the best selling point that I've ever heard for an event like that, and I actually got this from Andrew Coates. Him and I were hanging out one time before like summits and conferences kind of came back onto the scene because there was that little pause during the pandemic. But when they came back, it was always like there would be the conversation around, oh, that's a pretty substantial investment. And then he would talk about how much of a morale boost it is to kind of get back into a room with like your friends or like people who aren't your friends yet, but that could be. And I think if I was to sell the summit, I would be like, that morale boost alone is worth the price of admission. Like some of my best experiences, and I collect a lot of really good experiences, but some of them are getting to hang out with my friends at the summit, getting to just do life, getting to dive down rabbit holes in those late night conversations, or just like remember that we're alive and we're not robots that just eat, work, and sleep. And I think that
Yeah.
alone is very valuable. But with that said, I don't want our audience to miss out on like who you are and like what your start in the industry was and kind of what made that shift from like just simply being in the industry to kind of going about it on your own, on your terms.
Yeah. So I grew up and my favorite subjects in school were science and recess and gym. That's a pretty perfect recipe for someone that ends up getting an exercise science degree, which I did. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that degree at first, but I was lucky enough before like getting accepted into the program to meet with my advisor. I told her exactly what I'm telling you now. I was like, I think this stuff is like so cool. I just don't really know exactly what I want to do with it. I know there's like a lot of different, ways to go. An exercise science degree is kind of like a jumping off point for the most part. And my advisor had a lot of connections in the Pittsburgh area, and she was really kind to like connect me with kind of you can kind of go to three tracks. There's like the clinical side, think of like your physical therapy, pulmonary rehab, occupational therapy. There's the research side, so like working in a lab, doing the actual like exercise science research. And then there's the applied track. And after trying all three of those, I ended up, I was pretty confident. I was like, I like the applied track. I like being boots on the ground. I like working with, regular everyday people. And ultimately, I narrowed that down even further into coaching. And I think I always kind of knew that. Like I was like coaching on the side, like through my Venmo account. Don't tell the IRS.
Yeah.
Just like friends and family members, like starting like freshman year of college. Ended up doing like a lot of internships, a lot of volunteer work in like gyms and stuff. And then I was the lucky class of 2020, right into the pandemic.
Hmm.
Still continuing to coach on the side, and then I've been full time since 2021. Got my first job, personal training in a physical therapy clinic. So when people were discharged from rehab, they were like, "Hey, we recommend you keep exercising. We have a personal trainer here." So I did that for a year, and then I started working in corporate fitness, and that's when I found like, even more narrow. I like working with like that person that usually their general complaint is I don't have enough time and or energy. Not only was that something I see that was really needed, but it's kind of like a fun puzzle for me mentally, working with like those specific constraints. And I like that so much after being in like the corporate setting that I was like, I'm gonna start my own coaching business and kind of follow this same population because I like this problem to solve. And I think people are usually really shocked to find out what kind of results they can get with those limited time and energy constraints. And I think it's the coolest job in the world, and that's where I am now.
Love it. And like some of the things that stand out to me about you is like not only your technical approach, like the way you just described your intro was more like logical than just like simply, oh yeah, well, I really like fitness and I thought, why don't I give this to other people? Like you really thought about it through the lens of science, through the lens of self fulfillment. Like, this is things that you personally enjoyed. It wasn't necessarily for the vanity, but it was for the practicality of like following your career path that no matter what you made revenue wise, you would feel fulfilled, your bucket would be filled, and you'd feel a sense of purpose, which I think is integral to a career in this field. Like, if a person doesn't feel a sense of purpose, they're always going to be chasing the moving goalposts. They're always going to think like, if I make more money, then I'll be happier. If I get more like or achievements or more followers on Instagram, then I'll be happier. And then you see them leave. Now, as of late, one of the things that I've really liked is not only your approach to your media in general, because There's a lot of things that you've been working on, not only from like because you have like you do some writing and you do some, I think you have some podcast episodes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, a couple now. I joined Mike Milner and I joined Leo Alves.
nice. So it's just
Yeah,
like the momentum that you have in that is awesome. And then the most recent thing, that ice cream challenge, that's piqued my interest
yeah,
because I think
right.
more of us need to do stuff like that. More of us need to like just show people, not just tell people. Because like this isn't a dig at people who are able to like show the research and make the infographics because I love them all. But I think there's something to be said for someone creating like a human experiment of themselves and sharing what they've learned and sharing how they've had to pivot, what they've had to shift, maybe what they changed their mind on is something that Jordan Syatt does a lot and he does very well. And I just wanted to kind of talk more about what your experience with that experiment has been to this point, maybe what inspired it in the first place.
Yeah, so basically what I'm doing is I'm having a serving of Ben and Jerry's most calorie dense ice cream every single day and still losing 10 pounds in a month. I don't know when this is going to come out, but I'm on day 16. And really, what inspired that is the whole it's kind of like a pushback on a lot of these weight loss rules that I don't think have any merit. The ice cream I'm having is not high protein, it is not low fat, it is not low sugar. It's very high fat, high sugar. It's I looked at the label. It's got seed oils in it. I eat it past 9 p.m. sometimes, which is like another weight loss like can't do that rule. So it's kind of myth busting a couple things in one. I'm just kind of I, I I don't like the rules. Like there's actually very few rules that you really have to follow, and the rest of that you get to pick and choose based on personal preference and unique response. So I remember starting this. I had the idea like a month ago, maybe month and a half. I was like, okay, I want to do this. I had like kind of the whole plan laid out. I'll start in September because I'm like I'm traveling like every weekend in August. And then I was like, actually, that would make even a better point, to do it in August. I've been away like every weekend, 6.5 hour drive to visit family. Just this past weekend, going down the beach with friends this weekend. Like it's like all the obstacles at once, and still trying to make this happen, and just showing people that like it's if you control for total calories, like you'll lose weight, and you also don't have to give up your favorite foods for this. And I'm also trying my best to not eat like a rabbit for the rest of my meals because it's like, yeah, anyone can starve themselves. So like I'm still packing like my huge normal standard like lunch Tupperware that I bring to work every day. I'm having a breakfast that leaves me full. There's just like these little compromises that I got to make. I do miss cooking oil a lot. I have to use very little. There's not much room for that right now. But yeah, so like there's all these little compromises that I make. I would say on the average day, my peak hunger is at like a 5 or 6 out of 10, which I'm very happy with. I think that means that like this is working and I don't have to, suffer through this to prove a point. Because if I get through this and I'm like, yeah, it was totally awful, you can do it too. Like, no one's going to do that. So
Yeah,
yeah. And I'm learning a lot too. It's been a really long time since I had to intentionally lose weight and like actually go through like a weight loss phase. So it's a good reminder. Again, like kind of like you said, like go through it yourselves. Like we can say everything we want, we can read off studies, but like it does help to go through these things.
absolutely. And I mean, from my point of view, what I'm witnessing is like some critical thinking into it all. Like you're acknowledging that like a person could do this experiment and they could have like spinach and tuna for their meals of the day. But that is A, not a good idea. And then B, terribly, it's not enjoyable. And like I can speak to it from
Right.
experience because when I first started like kind of dabbling in the fitness industry, I was going to a lot of spin classes and my goal was weight loss. And so I did like 7 or 8 spin classes a week. And
Oh my God.
at least like one of my meals was like oatmeal and strawberries. And then another meal was spinach and tuna. And then another meal might have been eggs. just like scrambled eggs. And like
Yeah.
it was very effective, but it was a massive calorie deficit and it was not sustainable and it was nothing that I would ever put somebody else through. I was just kind of going through a point in life where I knew it would work and I just did it. And then if I did another new approach, I would probably teach people how to cook nutrient dense meals. And I would teach people how to like see and understand serving sizes and see and understand like the ways that different choices have a ripple effect. So everything from like regular Coke versus Coke Zero to cooking oil versus no cooking oil, or like one kind of oil versus the other kind of oil, or spritzing the oil versus just pouring it. Like there's all these little nuances that people we kind of get into this space where we just think that people know what to do. But then when we talk to more people, we realize that a lot of people, that is not something that crosses their mind. They're just thinking, I'm eating healthy because there's some green on their plate, or they're thinking they're doing good because like they had meals that they cooked at home, but then they're not realizing that they're deficient in their protein intake, they're deficient in their fiber intake, and they're deficient in like their hydration. Like a lot of people are walking around dehydrated. So with that said, what would you say is kind of like your protocol that you're integrating into this to make it both enjoyable and also sustainable?
You did mention the two things of like fiber and protein. Those have to be quite high every day. Otherwise, I am starving. When I am not trying to cut weight, I usually have baked oatmeal for breakfast. But with where I'm at right now and the way that I usually make that, I'm like, it just doesn't fit in the calorie budget. And you might be thinking like, you know, baked protein oatmeal, like it's got the protein and it's whole grains, and just the way I made it, like I'm like, it's not serving me. So that only lasted a couple days before I had to change to something else, which is now like yogurt, protein powder, and fruit. And it gets me more in the calorie budget. Like there's not a whole lot of room when I got to lose weight this fast, and there's a depressingly small but 500 calorie bowl of ice cream coming at the end of every day. So yeah, doing that, and also like I love cooking. It's been a passion of mine for like years now. So I have a pretty set up spice cabinet, and it's saving my life.
Yeah,
I could not get through these if I didn't know how to like properly salt and like spice things, and also a lot of hot sauce. It's saving because like again, like a lot of these foods, like I could spice it up too, but I'm like, it's still kind of dry, and I again, there's no room for like adding stuff like cheese or cooking oil. And I'm not saying like those things aren't healthy. I use a lot of cooking oils and cheese on like pretty much all my food year round, except for this. I'm like, it's just not worth the calorie to how full I get after that calorie ratio. So I am tearing through hot sauce right now. And luckily I have a pretty resilient stomach. So like no, I'm not like, running to the bathroom doing this. I would have had to have to find an alternative.
totally. I mean,
Yeah.
you bring up a lot of good things with that because I think people forget like just because you're making certain choices in how you're setting up your meals doesn't mean that your meals are like lacking soul or lacking some personality
Hmm.
to them. And it's pretty crazy how even just like different cooking methods, like cooking low and slow, can create better outcomes than rushing through things and burning the food. Because like what I find is I cook with cooking oil and I'm less likely to burn things generally.
Hmm.
But then if I'm not cooking with cooking oil, which happens more often than not, if I'm not careful based on the ingredients that are in there, sometimes I'll burn the food and then I hate the healthy food even more. And so sometimes just having some patience or using like the right tools, like some people will use a slow cooker that's almost like when you use a slow cooker well, you can't mess it up. It's like unless you've put ingredients in weird proportions or let it go for like 2 days or something, like it's very tough to mess up a slow cooker recipe. And in the same sense, you can put a lot of nutrient dense ingredients into there. And sometimes like nutrient dense ingredients that are easier on the pocketbook, like maybe, I mean, my best example that I've done was I've ended up, and not because of some like weird fad diet, but I've ended up getting organ meat from different, like getting like liver from a cow or moose hearts or something. Like, what, how am I going to eat this? Because I'm a frugal person, I always find a way. And I found that in both cases, cooking with a slow cooker was very effective because then I could go into my own collection of spices, which is probably much more limited than what yours is, but there's still some stuff to work with. And I could add some depth, some personality to the meal while still keeping it on track. That said, I think one of the things that people might kind of miss the mark on is like portioning and like volume control, things like that. So when you're introducing someone into kind of taking control of that aspect of their nutrition, what is the best way that you go about it?
Whether it's just a learning tool or a permanent tool, I think like everyone, at least for a week of their lives, should weigh and measure their food.
Hmm.
It is one of the most eye opening experiences you'll ever do. I remember being in college and our nutrition professor had us do it just like over the weekend. He was like, all right, it's Thursday. I'm going to see you again on Tuesday. Here's what I want you to do. Just, just do it. We're going to talk about it next time you're here. And these are a bunch of exercise science students. And I'm sure you can guess the outcome of how a bunch of 21-year-olds eat and drink over the weekend
Yeah.
at a big university. It wasn't pretty. People had their pie charts, and like a third of it was like alcohol and stuff like that. Yeah, someone had like 8 hot dogs from like some like free freshman event that they snuck into, and like it was a mess. We had a good laugh about it, but like there were a lot of like holy crap moments.
Yeah.
Like I've been cooking with like that much oil. Like I thought it was just like a drizzle. And then there was other things like I thought that was healthy. And it's like, well, it's nutrient dense, but it's also a lot of calories. Like those are different things. And we got to chat about it and have a really good laugh. And if there's a bunch of students that are studying this and have a general interest in this and they're still having their minds blown from doing this for the first time, like imagine, you know, the everyday person that is not good with nutrition because they're good at other things. You know, imagine like all the information you're going to find.
Yeah.
Like a lot's going to start making sense if you just give that like a week. Try try your best to not, you know, subconsciously change your habits just because you're tracking. It's probably going to happen a little bit. That's what you measure, you manage. You're still going to learn a ton. So if anyone, like if you haven't done it, unless you have like a really really specific reason where you're like I really shouldn't track, maybe there's like a pretty strong like disordered eating history, something like that. But like 98% of the people, if you haven't done it, do it just for a couple
Absolutely.
days at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like full disclosure, I myself, I've never used food scale. But as I say that, I'm going to be ordering one. This has been something that's been on my mind for a while because I've been like, okay, like I know how to portion things and like how to measure things in a generalist sense. And a large part of that is because I've had the same dishes and containers since I was like 21. And so I know that if I put like rice up to this line, then it's this much rice. And I know that if I have like 1 pound of beef, well, it's generally going to be the same as the other 1 pound of beef that I had. Or if I get the same package of frozen broccoli, then it's going to be this amount. But there is so much value to like, again, using yourself as like a human experiment and then just kind of like what I would say, because there it is definitely true. There are some people where it's like the less they think about things at a very like microscopic level, the easier life is for them. But there's also kind of like an educational component where it's like it's not necessarily designed for everybody to make this part of their identity where they go traveling to see family and they have to take out their scale and they have to make it everything that they think about. But more so, like for me, I've been able to make weight for jujitsu. Got proof of concept in that my method works.
Mhm.
But the reason why it worked is because I was able to make a rough estimate, a portion size based on like the same anchor glass dishes, the same white IKEA bowl, and the same pots and pans that I've had for years. And I was able to be accurate in that sense. But if I was going to try to optimize even further, it would benefit me to get a better idea of like more exact portions, or like maybe how different brand names are different in like their volume or in like their food quality, etc. Like cooking beef from one farm is going to be different from cooking beef from another farm, or cooking eggs from a grocery store is different from cooking eggs from the farmer's market. That's probably one of my favorite examples because like they're different color and everything. Like there's so much difference to
Yeah.
them. Now, with that said, I'm someone who like I've used my Fitness Pal. I've used a lot of different nutrition tracking apps, but I always like to pick people's brains as to what they've been using, what they've liked, what they haven't liked, because I like to kind of make sure that the people that I help are getting the best experience. So what has been your kind of what have you used for nutrition tracking apps? What do you like? What do you not like?
I like macros first. They, to my knowledge, it's the only one that has like the free version has the barcode scanner, which I really like. And then the rest is just like ease of use. Like I find it like I feel like it took me like maybe 2 days to really get familiar with it, which I think is like pretty quick.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like tracking for the very first time, like actually like weighing and tracking things. So I highly recommend macros first. And I also want to mention that like I don't track like everything I eat all the time. For these 30 days during this little ice cream weight loss experiment, it's pretty important. And also during the meals where I can't track because I'm not going to bring my food scale to a restaurant. Even if I was comfortable doing that, I don't think it'd be that accurate. Like you don't know what's
Yeah.
in there. I feel like you become like a better estimator. Like if you're currently tracking, then you have like that. Like you can kind of look at the food and be like, all right, kind of looks like this portion because I know like that. That beef patty looks like that amount of ground beef that I normally cook, and if you bite into that, be like, oh, that tastes like it has like this amount of oil on it. You just become like a better estimator. But yeah, outside of that, I just use it as like a tune up.
Yeah.
I'll do like a week every like 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
just to kind of like remind myself like that's what that much food looks like. And I kind of know. And then I just feel like I'm pretty good at estimating the rest of the time.
Well, I mean, there's a few things that we can take away from this because, like, if somebody that was working with one of us was listening to this and like, oh, you don't track all the time, well, like, this is sort of like the thought that I'd have in approaching that because when we are like maintaining our lifestyle and things are good, we don't necessarily need to track as long as we're consistent. And what I think makes it easier is kind of creating an identity around the things that need to be consistent. So for me, I've sort of created an identity around like when I go to social events, I don't drink. I think I've cut out booze for the last like 3 years or something like that. And so I just
Oh,
know
wow.
that if I'm going somewhere, like I might have a non-alcoholic beer, but it's going to be substantially less calories. And I almost have the calories of the different brands like memorized. Like I've had non-alcoholic beer as low as 30 calories per can to as high as like some of the like Belgian non-alcoholic beers are still like 120 calories per can. But then in contrast with the ones that contain alcohol, you're still reducing it by like 80 to 100 calories. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to food, then I'm thinking like another component of my identity is I try to get 40 to 50 grams of protein per meal. And I like to get around, I think, like 30 grams for the day in fiber. And it's just kind of like, it's a little bit of intuition that comes into that because sometimes, like, you can't just wake up one morning and decide you're just going to increase your fiber exponentially. You almost have to like ladder up your fiber intake if you're someone who is fiber deficient.
Yeah.
But when I get to that point where I'm feeling good, the body's feeling good, I'm not like bloated or stomach gurgling or anything like that, then I'll be like, okay, what are my go-to sources of fiber? And I'll usually prioritize things like just vegetables and maybe some lentils, maybe some beans, and then just things like oatmeal or stuff like that. Just like anything that contains some decent portion of fiber that aligns with my other goals. And what I tend to stray away from is like the processed fiber products, because like there was definitely a time in my own life where I was like, oh, well, like this quickly checks the box. But I found that it sabotaged other pillars of life, where like I could have like a fiber one bar, but like it wasn't maybe the best choice for calories, or perhaps it kind of made me feel like I still had to have something else. Whereas if I have
Mm.
like a big ass salad and it's got like chickpeas and it's got all kinds of different things in there, I'll feel like I just had a feast. But like it's the calorie equivalent of like maybe a small portion out serving of like some chicken thighs and some rice and like a little bit of vegetables. So long ramble basically to outline my kind of approach with it, to let people know that sometimes it's a combination of the educational component just to kind of know where they're at with things. And then also just like if a person's like, well, why should I track? And it's like, well, you have enrolled us in helping you reach a goal. And if it's like a lifestyle based goal, like you just want to be an active person, you might not have to track that specifically. But if it's like you want to get ready for a wedding and you have to be able to fit the dress that you got fitted for or that you're planning to fit into, then it would be a disservice to not share this insight with you where you could kind of like learn how you could almost guarantee an outcome, because there's going to be other life factors that come into play as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to tell people like this doesn't have to be perfect to work. The whole tracking thing. One, once you get used to the app and your food scale or your measuring cups, whatever you're using to like weigh before you track the food, like getting used to all the logistics after a couple days, definitely like within a week. This is a this is a 5 minutes a day, maybe 10 minutes if you're not, you know, super tech savvy. Like that it doesn't take a whole lot of time. So I like to get that out there if someone's like, I don't have the time to, you know, weigh and measure. It's so tedious. It might be for the first couple times you do it, I'm gonna be honest. But like after that, like it's just you just kind of do it. It's kind of just like putting it in a separate bowl that's on your food scale and then into your plate or like another bowl, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of, recording stuff along the way. And then on those days where you truly are too busy or you're like, I just need to eat. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to look at the, digital scale today. Totally cool. Since you've been tracking, you're a better estimator now. Like it still serves you. I don't think it's as tedious and time consuming as people think.
Yeah. And there's like, people can be agile in their decision making process. Like maybe they legitimately do not have time to spare, but maybe they have the resources that they can allocate to making that process more accurate. And like some of the best examples that I've seen is like there's definitely an increase in either like meal prep companies or in some cases like a private chef. Like I listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts, and so I know that there's a market for people who are like chefs essentially, and they will go into a person's home and prep all the food that that person needs for the week. And then there's also people who are working in a commercial kitchen where they'll do this at scale. But both of those options are available for people who legitimately don't have time. And then for people who don't have time and their resources are very limited, what I find is effective is just kind of looking at the big rocks that need to be tackled and then looking at ways that they can continually get a source of those. So one example is there's a lot of businesses that will seek out the produce that's too good to go, and then they'll be able to offer that at a reduced rate. And so for most people, they would benefit from increasing their fruits and vegetables. And if they could consistently get fruits and vegetables at a reduced rate, then they're going to be on track with that and it's not going to be a big cost problem. And then they could just have a ritual where, like, when they receive this, obviously there's time is of the essence. Like, if they wait too long, this stuff is going to go bad. But
Mhm.
they could cut it up, bag it up, freeze it up, and then use it as needed. And then the same protocol could exist for like sources of protein, whether it be that somebody finds, like, this isn't true in all cases, but in some cases, if you have like sort of a partnership or an arrangement with a local farmer and you buy in bulk and you fill your deep freeze, sometimes you can get a better cost for it. If nothing else, you probably get better food quality for it. But it's just kind of like a cool opportunity to make it work for you, even if you have less than ideal circumstances. And I think people love making excuses for themselves as to why they can't do something, because it's easier to do nothing than to apply themselves and truly see their potential in what they could do given their circumstances. But that said, I'm going to segue us into my next question that could get you thinking. And this question is, like, for myself, I like to have kind of like a North Star that I'm aiming towards, some kind of a big, hairy, audacious goal. And it could be like 10 years down the line. So I'd love to learn more about, like, what is your big goal for yourself, both on a personal level and on a professional level. You can talk about both or you can focus on one.
I think they kind of overlap, personal and professional. I didn't do this until a couple of years ago, but I wrote out my core values and I even like looked up more because I was like, is this really the top one? Because I couldn't find something that beat it. And it was just service to others. I like helping people out. I think it's why I like cooking. When I cook for myself, it's pretty boring. When I'm cooking for like, my fiance, my friends and family, like I go all out. I love it. I think it's why I like coaching too. So ultimately on a personal level, I want to build a life that's around that. And, to do that, I need money by doing my other thing that's still service to others. Like it kind of ties all in. And the more help I'm giving out, the more I'm chatting with people, you know, putting in work to figure out their problems and talk things out, the happier I am. I think is the most like fulfilling thing to me. Is just like I said, like helping people out, service to others.
Hmm. I like it. And then if we kind of dug into that a bit further, is there any like tangible, palpable like goals that you have for yourself? Like, things that you want to be part of your life, or things that you want to achieve or be able to, like, a change in environment, a change in scenery, anything like that?
It would be really awesome. So I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not doing my coaching business like full time. I still have my corporate job, which is still coaching. I'm a
Yeah.
wellness coach at a pharmaceutical company. It's like having an employee benefit, like a free coach. I think it would be really cool to eventually get to that point where like I'm just doing me
Hmm.
because again, going back to like that mix of personal and professional fulfillment, service to others, if I'm fully flexible, me and my fiance, we talk about when we're financially and emotionally ready, having a family. I had a parent at home all the time growing up. Like my mom was home while my dad was at work. And that was so cool. Like I always had a parent by it. And I'm like, if I could, you know, just do that, like I can give that same thing back. And like that flexibility could just give me pretty much unlimited potential. Like I would spend literally my whole day fulfilling my core value of
Yeah.
service to others. And
Yeah.
I think that is so cool. And I've talked about that before, and people, I think they give me like an odd look, like, do you want to do that like all day? I don't think there's really much burnout risk there unless my core values drastically change, which I don't see that happening. It's been this way for a while. That's a problem that I is it's made up. Like I don't need to worry about anti burnout when I'm like still, itching for more opportunities to just help other people out. It's really not a concern of mine. So if I could just fill all of my waking hours with that, I'd be a I'd be a very happy man.
I like it. And it's just like I think it's important when people are setting goals to have some kind of like a life anchor interwoven into that. And like something where they reflect on it and they know what it looks like, where they can be very visual, like where you're able to kind of you mentioned that you always had a parent around growing up, and so for yourself to visualize that you've got a family and you're always able to be present, and like if they've got like soccer or any sport that they're in, and you're able to, if you chose to, you could be a coach or you could be a very like parent always showing up to games and stuff like that. That is game changer, and I think that's the best way to approach going after goals, because then when we have tough days and we're like, what's the point? Why are we even doing this? We always have something to kind of like draw us back in and kind of keep us moving forward. And like for me, very similar. Like my hope is that one day I'll have a family, and I also very much value that ability to be present. And then I also like I see the world changing and I see all these different things. I'm like, and what would make it better for me is if I kind of went back to my rural roots instead of living in a busy city. I might still frequent the city, but to have my roots on an acreage or a farm, I think that would make me very fulfilled. And so it's like the more we talk about goals in this way, and especially because I like to think of my podcast as a time capsule, the better we're equipped to achieve those goals. And like my favorite thing to do is like I'll talk to a friend 1 year, and then 5 years later, I'll have him back on the show, and I'll be like, well, last time you talked about this, and like where you're at is a little bit different, but it's still in line with your values, and that's badass. Or sometimes they'll say that they're going to do something, and I'll have it captured, and then maybe I'll like check in with them, and I'll be like, hey, how's like that book coming along, or like, did you go to that country yet, or how are things progressing? And then maybe like it could even come back to that abundance mindset where maybe somebody's biggest thing was like they're kind of they didn't think that they could do it, so they didn't even try. And so maybe they just needed a little nudge later down the line where it's like, hey, like if your goal is blank, try this, this, and that. And that would probably get you further along than dwelling on the fact that you're not there yet and thinking that you'll never be there. All that said, there is two more questions that I have for you. And the second last question is, have there been any sources of inspiration for you or books that you've gotten a lot from that have kind of changed the way that you've looked at your life and your career?
A tough one. In terms of the books, unfortunately, a lot of the books I read are like quite nerdy and technical. But think a lot of the inspiration just comes from the people that I'm around, specifically my fiance and my brother. Like to me, I'm kind of just like an average of those two people. And I just like the way they go about things. It's like a good mix of like work hard, play hard mentality. I think they're both very intentional people. They they have fun and they're fulfilled and they're always just great to be around. So I draw a lot of inspiration from them, and it's kind of like what I'm trying to do. Like at the end of the day, like there's no like right or wrong way to do this as long as I'm like fulfilling these core values. Then I'm good. It's really not much more than that. I
Yeah.
also grew up with like what I call like little brother syndrome, where I thought like my brother was just everything he did was like the coolest and funniest and smartest thing I've ever seen in my life because he was like 2 years older than me. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't like completely shake that off, even though I'm an adult. So like it's always cool to just like look up to him. I see him. He's like he does really fulfilling work, like public policy, but he's also in like a punk band. He's like super cool and like yeah, it's awesome. And like yeah, watching my fiance just like she's so chill when you're hanging out with her, but at the same time, like she's just a total badass with her career. Like she's a physician assistant and she just like is like always trying to be like the absolute best that she could be at that. And that's just really cool to see every day. Sometimes I can't believe that it's like the same person.
Yeah.
Like
I
this
mean,
like chill, goofy person. I'm like, you're like a badass at work, and I've like never even seen you there.
it's cool to reflect on things like that and to be able to like look at the people closest to you and be able to like come constantly pull all the best attributes that they have, because it's not only a reflection of them, but it's a reflection about how you feel about yourself. Because it's like that expression of like hurt people, and it's so true. And so if somebody's, what I find is anybody who tends to be critical, especially to people who have nothing to do with them, are often very much struggling on the inside. And like the the whole point to shift trajectory isn't to attack other people, it's to like look inward and figure out what you have to do. Like, do you have to change your own career? Do you have to change maybe things in your life? Maybe it's, there's so many different factors a person could look at, but like the only way to find a solution is to look inward. And so hopefully people are able to kind of like look at the ways that they can either think of the great qualities of the people around them, because that's a major component in reaching goals, is you have to be kind of critical as to like who you allow to get close to you. And then also just kind of like getting better at seeing people's strengths. Like even with the clients that we work with, like we should be able to see what makes each client good, not just in the fitness sense, but in their personality and their commitment and their dedication and their resilience, and maybe like their ability to come up with ideas on the fly, or their creativity when it comes to different like events or initiatives that come up. But now we're going to go into the very last question of the episode, and it's one that I've brought back from the ashes. It's something that I used to finish off episodes with back in 2018, and
I'm
it
nervous
is
now.
if you were to give one piece of advice on how to live your life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
I think just look at like what's going to give you like maximum life fulfillment. And I actually just had a conversation with a client about this. We were talking about like when do you make food choices for, specifically like her weight loss goals, and when do you make them for like joy? And it's like what it's really hard to calculate. It's not like we can like quantify these things, at least not accurately. You could try to estimate it. I don't think we as in humans are like very good at estimating this, but we can get better at it. What's going to be the choice that like, both now, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years after, like what's that going to bring to you? And I think it's that like that future you that you got to keep in mind. Like, what are they going to think about this?
Yeah.
And you could compare. Let's compare two things. Like, let's just say like going 1,500 calories over your calorie budget for the day because you're trying to lose weight. One of them is you got a super long car ride and you're just like car snacks because you're bored because driving's boring. The other 1,500 calories is pizza with friends visiting out of town. And let's just assume for some reason they're like exactly the same nutritionally, even though it's two different foods. Like one of those is clearly like a better choice. Like one you could probably tell yourself like I just got to power through this and be bored on this long car ride, and the other one it's like I don't want to miss this. Like
Yeah.
that this is cool. Like I don't see them a lot. We're all eating pizza, laughing, being dumb together. Like that's a good time. Like so, I would encourage everyone to I guess to bring it back to nutrition, like stay on track. Like, but it could be anything. Like think about like how is this serving me? Not just nutritionally. And then you can kind of like make a better decision. Like, is this a good trade off? Because everything is ultimately a trade off. If we go to like an example, like something talked about right now, like I'm glad there's like a pretty big like anti-alcohol wave right now, because I it would just be false to say that like, yeah, the average person, or I'm getting my words mixed up. The truth is the average person would be healthier if like they drank less alcohol,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean like, you know, maybe that's how you, maybe it's not permanent, but like that's how you start socializing. And like I don't drink nearly as much as I did in college, but like I had a lot of fun, like dumb memories with my friend, and like you know, doing that in college. And it's like I don't really regret it, even though like nutritionally, like it wasn't, you know, like I would take those, you know, calories and the fact that it is actually poison. I know that word gets thrown a lot around a lot right now. Alcohol is actually a poison. I would take that over the calorie equivalent of just like mindless study snacks
Yeah. Yeah.
any day of the week. So sorry, I know I'm going on for a long time, but like think about like how like each decision is, you know, what does this give me now? Because immediate joy is also important, but also like later joy is also important. And that's what you got to keep in mind when you're like contemplating doing a hard thing.
Yeah.
What is future me going to benefit from this? Or like what's the trade-off going to be here?
I like it. And even like everything from your point of like looking at the future and how that correlates with the decision that's happening now and like the compound effect of it. Like for myself, sometimes I would have a ritual where I go to the grocery store and I just habitually pick out like a treat every time. And then when I would reflect on the compound effect of that, I'm like, oh, I do this and it puts me over on calories for 2 of the 7 days of the week. And it's really like for the outcome that that brings me, it's not worth it because like the joy is not nearly as good as what it would be if I was like feeling my best self. And it's like a person to person basis. Like for me, that's my experience with it. Another person might be like, no, I could lose in a race or I could not quite look optimal, but I'm just happier with this donut or I'm happier with these cookies kind of thing. And then on the other side, what you bring about with alcohol and stuff like that, like it's a very valid point because there are times whether it's like culturally or socially, it can be a big catalyst in forming relationships or in creating opportunities. But what I would say that a person needs to do is to realize that they are a one of one and to kind of make a very like personalized assessment as to the pros and cons. Because like for myself, like I could put things into moderation, but it's so much easier to be consistent if I have a kind of like a black and white protocol for it. And every so often, like if I went to a friend's wedding and we were like toasting the couple and we had everybody had champagne or everybody had a glass of wine, I would partake. I wouldn't be like, oh no, I need something different. Like if it was something where it kind of created this sense of like a major milestone, a major moment, then I would kind of shift my identity for that fleeting moment because it's only going to happen once in our lives. But then when it comes down to like watching a hockey game or going to a birthday, then I'm kind of go back to my old protocol. And when I'm thinking about like why would I make this decision in the first place, I would reflect back on all my experiences and I'd realize like yeah, it like makes me talk more if I have a few beer, but is the quality of what I talk about better? And in like 90% of cases it is not. And that's not true for everybody, but it's definitely true for me. I'm like, I say dumber things and I don't even say them eloquently. And so it's just not a good time for me. So it's just something that I have to be on top of. But with all that said, that brings our interview to a close. And I would like to thank you so much, Nolan, for joining me. Where can I send people if they want to find you, follow you, learn more about you?
Yeah, I think everything could be found through Instagram, Nolan underscore Vannata. I always feel so lucky in the fitness space because like I don't have to have like Nolan coach. Like no one else has my name, which is
Yeah.
it's fortunate. I don't have to get creative. And yeah, I have all links from there. I have some free resources. My DMs are always open if anyone has questions. If you couldn't tell by now, I can't shut up about fitness and nutrition. So like I'm happy to talk about it. And if you just have a whatever questions you have, I'm always happy to chat about it.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.